Greetings to you, my friends. I am Adamu, of the monadic entity of the Pleiadian civilization, speaking to you as always through my dear friend and scribe, Zingdad. Today we come to the end of a small journey that we have been walking together. Today I offer you a discussion of the last of the 6 sacred steps. I'd like to remind you firstly that the purpose of these 6 sacred steps is reality creation. One takes these steps to alter one's external experience of life. As such, these are powerful tools, and they should be used carefully, mindfully, and respectfully. To this end, I remind you furthermore that you should not attempt to use parts of these steps without being conscious of all of the steps. Please work your way through all of them in sequence, beginning with the first sacred step. You can find the entire body of my communication through Zingdad conveniently laid out in order, together with their text transcripts on Zingdad's website. The steps that now lie behind us are 1. Acceptance, 2. Intention, 3. Action, 4. Visualization, 5. Emotion, and now on this occasion we will be taking the final step, 6. Observation. And this 6th step is broken up into 5 sub-steps of its own, which we will deal with in detail. These 5 steps are A. Awareness, B. Objections, C. Repetition, D. Acceptance, and E. Celebration. Let's begin with the first one, awareness. You should know that all human beings do nothing but create their reality. But almost all of you do this reality creation in an entirely unconscious, uncontrolled fashion. So, for example, when you sit and worry endlessly about the future, you are doing nothing other than setting intentions for the things you very much do not want to have happen. And since you then also spend time feeling the pain of those future worries, you are also empowering them with emotion. Quite often you will lie in bed even visualizing your worries too. That's 3 of the 6 sacred steps right there, empowering something that you really don't want. And there are all kinds of other things that you might do when you, for example, buy insurance. A very common and right-seeming thing to do in your world. Are you not taking action? Are you not investing energy in the very most disastrous things that you don't want to have in your life? Now, Zingdad wants me to say at this point that I am not a financial advisor and not qualified to tell you not to buy insurance. Very well. But I am simply pointing out that which is obvious to me. Surely you should be putting your energy and therefore investing your money into the creation of things you really do want. And so these are just a few of the ways in which you are unintentionally and unconsciously misusing the 6 sacred steps to create the outcomes you don't want. Watching this mind programming that is called television news is another. They even provide you with visualizations in their programming, and then when you get angry or fearful about what you see, you also begin to engage your emotions to add your creative power to these ever-unfolding disasters. And they very much do intend for you to become emotionally involved in their programming. And sitting around moaning with your friends and colleagues about the state of the world is the same thing. Endless complaining is also a form of intention setting, after all. There are very many ways in which the average human being is constantly creating negatively. And then worst of all, when they get what they are creating, they cry, "Why me? Why is this happening to me? I didn't want this." It would be quite funny if it wasn't all so very sad. And so, my friends, the first part of observation is simply that, awareness. Firstly, the awareness that the things going on in your life have been brought to you by your own creations. Sometimes it gets confusing. Often you get things that you have no idea you were creating. Sometimes you get things that you started creating many lifetimes ago. Sometimes you get things that are very much unintended consequences of your creations. Let's talk about unintended consequences for a moment. Let's take an example. A young man says he wants a beautiful girlfriend, and he tries to go about creating that in his life. But he is creating from a very shallow place. He wants this whole other human being to look a particular way so that he can flatter his ego with her presence, so that he can gain prestige before his friends. In his intention setting, he's not looking for love. He's looking for aggrandizement for his ego at her expense and at the expense of his friends. When his creations come to fruition, what he gets is a woman who is attractive on the outside, but who, due to her own pain and insecurities on the inside, constantly diminishes him and cracks him down. He is getting what he is actually putting out, ego diminishment. Now, if by contrast our young man decided he wanted to find a partner with whom he could feel and express the greatest love possible, well, then he would be on a far healthier path. Then he might find the girlfriend of his dreams arriving in his life. She would be ideal for him, in that her strengths and failings would be a perfect match for his. I'm sure you see the difference. And of course it is entirely possible that she might be very beautiful too. But it's all about the intention that he set. It's all about getting unintended consequences when you set intentions poorly. This is why one must take the step of intention setting very carefully. As laid out in that step, you must very carefully check that your intention is indeed in alignment with your heart and with the greater good of the all. Otherwise, you reap a reward that is painfully unintended. The same thing very often happens with those who set the intention to gain advancement or money beyond what others around them have. Such a desire for unearned inequality between yourself and others will yield a painful result. Perhaps as you work your way towards getting this fabulous amount of money that you've been intending, perhaps you find yourself constantly self-sabotaging and failing to attain this wealth. Or perhaps you do indeed attain some measure of wealth, but find that it is empty, meaningless, and lonely, when you lose the friends that you have, the associates, the colleagues that you gain don't really feed your soul. Whatever the case, setting an intention to gain anything at the expense and diminishment of others will yield a painful result. And again, when you get this painful result, you are most likely to end up saying, "But I didn't want this." So my friends, I invite you now to cease thinking like a victim. Notice your creations. Notice when things happen in life that you have brought them to yourself. And most importantly, be on the lookout for the results of the previous 5 sacred steps coming to fruition. A dear friend of Zingdad's set the intention to get herself debt-free. She worked through the 6 sacred steps. Her action step was to use every single cent she could pay towards her debts. And then for her, The observation step was to notice the many small miracles that happened as the universe conspired to assist her to get debt-free. She noticed, marveled at, and celebrated the magical ways in which her debt shrank to nothing in a miraculously short time. And that is how it works. And when she was debt-free, she could look back and say, "This happened in a third of the time I thought it would have." That's when she could affirm that something special and magical had happened for her. And that's when she could begin to let go of the idea that she was merely a victim in this world. She could begin to believe in her ability to create. And as she learned to trust that, so she could begin to create more and more powerfully. Zingdad himself, some time ago, decided it was time to allow abundance to flow into his life. He set the intention not to get abundance, not to gain at the expense of others, but to give abundantly, and then to allow life to bless him with abundance in return. And then he observed this happening like a miracle, like magic. Life began to bless him with more than he needs. And that, my friends, brings me to the real point of the observation step. It's for you to notice that you are able to create your reality. See it happening. Affirm that you do have this power. Let go of the idea that things just randomly happen to you. Transform yourself from a being of victim consciousness to a being of creator consciousness. Yes, you are creating enjoyable experiences for yourself along the way, and that's all very nice. But the real outcome here is that you are changing your beliefs about yourself. You are becoming a creator. And that only really happens with this final step, observation. Now I'd like to discuss the next sub-step, objections. It is necessary that I bring to your attention a rather major complication that might arise with reality creation. The things in your life that you feel are not serving you are not just random accidents. They're not just bad things that happen. They are there because you created them. And so now, when you create differently, something needs to happen with your old creations. The way this very often manifests is that as you begin to consciously create a desired outcome, life begins to present you with all the reasons why you should not have that outcome. These are your objections. These are the many ancient beliefs that you have been clinging to in your unconscious as to why you could not or should not have this desirable outcome. When the objection arises, sometimes all that is required is that you notice, this is an objection to my new creation. And that you then reaffirm your intention and continue to create it anyway. Sometimes that's enough. But sometimes deeper work is necessary. Sometimes you will need to journey into your own psyche to discover what part of you is holding on to limiting beliefs that will otherwise continue to sabotage your new creation. When Zingdad published his first release, Book 1 of the Ascension Papers, he found that it simply would not gain any traction. Truly, only a pitifully small audience was interested in it, and no amount of marketing effort would yield any larger an audience. He was faced with two possible conclusions. 1. The book was genuinely not good enough to gain the interest of readers. 2. He was in some other way blocking his creation of his desire to share his work as broadly as possible. Fortunately, Zingdad chose to thoroughly explore the second option before giving up on his work by choosing the first. Zingdad applied his own soul reintegration techniques upon himself and discovered a past life in which he had abused power over others. He ended that life with the belief that he is responsible for the impact he has on others' lives. With such a belief powerfully in place, he unconsciously did not want his books to sell. You see, if he believed himself to be 100% responsible for what others do in response to his expressions, then he would believe that he would become responsible for the soul progression of every reader who ever read his book. A frightening prospect indeed. And to compound this, he also carried deep guilt, shame, and remorse for that past life's events that informed in him a belief that he was unworthy of success. So he found two beliefs that were limiting him. And these were the objections that continued to block his creation. Or they did until he released them. Now it's far beyond the ambit of this discussion on observation to cover every possible objection scenario and how one might deal with all of them. But if you find yourself stuck in your creations, if you find yourself unable to get past a self-sabotaging limitation, perhaps it would be beneficial to seek the assistance of someone able to help you to look within your psyche for a part of self that is indeed in need of reintegration. I'd like to discuss now the next sub-step, repetition. It bears mentioning that some creations are of vastly greater complexity than others. Some creations require layers of refinement before they can come fully to fruition. And so it might be that you find yourself arriving at the observation step, noticing that some step of your creation has come to pass, but not all of it. Or perhaps you notice that your creation is manifesting in some unexpectedly undesirable way. Whatever the case, it is often desirable to simply begin the process from the first step again, to go through the whole cycle of 6 steps again, perhaps a few times, perhaps even many times. If you do decide to repeat the process though, please do ask yourself, with every iteration, if there's not something that you should be changing or adapting. Should you not, perhaps, be shifting your intention to something a little more beneficial, a little wiser? Something that is backed with a little more clarity, perhaps. Do be aware, though, that you very much can overdo this. If you obsessively and anxiously repeat the steps over and over again, bringing big changes to each repetition, you'll begin to create so diversely and chaotically that your creations will again be limited or blocked. And do bear in mind, the sponsoring thought behind an obsessive intention setting means you really are struggling with a belief that needs to be worked on right there, an objection that needs to be addressed right there. Let's move on to the next sub-step, acceptance. You will notice that acceptance is a sub-step of observation, but it is also the first sacred step, and so it is that we arrive at the very final part of the final step. We end where we began, with acceptance. Acceptance is crucial for you to remain in creator consciousness. Whatever comes from your journey through the 6 sacred steps, you will need to look at it and accept it, to affirm, yes, I created this. Crucially, you will need to accept all the outcomes of your creations. To create something and then reject it is to densify your shadow. So do make sure that you reside in acceptance for as much of your journey as you can, but especially do not consider the 6 sacred steps complete until you are back in a state of acceptance. When someone offers you a gift, that gift does not become yours until you have accepted it. And in the same way, you have not taken ownership of your creation until you accept it. And from that position of ownership of your creation, you can then ask, now that I have this creation, now what do I want to do with it? And so you might begin to create again at step 1. Except that there is one final sub-step of observation, which is celebration. It really is quite important, my friends, that you mark the moment when any of your intentions make it all the way through the 6 sacred steps and come to full fruition. When it has happened, when it is real, when you are living it, then you really should stop for a moment and celebrate that fact. Throw a little party just for yourself, or a big one for everyone that you know, if that feels more appropriate. But whatever the case, mark the occasion. Remember it. This is a moment when you created your reality and noticed it. This is a moment when you overcame the victim programming that lowered your consciousness in the first place. This is a moment in which you raised your consciousness into creator consciousness. Complete such a cycle a few times in succession, come to celebrate a few times in succession, and you will really start to transform your beliefs about yourself, and about your life, and about who and what you think you are in this world entirely. And this is why you must celebrate. Yes, you got something that you wanted, that's nice. But far more importantly, you shifted your beliefs and your level of consciousness. And so in conclusion, we come to the end of this part of our journey together. The 6 sacred steps are your tools to use now. You will gain the benefits of using them responsibly, and you will also bear the consequences of using them ill-advisedly. There are more powerful, more direct ways to create. But as with all tools, the more powerful they are, the greater the level of responsibility required to use them. The 6 sacred steps are a great beginning point, as they can be applied and used even by beings of deep third density consciousness. Even those who do not yet believe that they are able to create their reality at all can begin here. Try the first steps out, and in so doing, raise their consciousness through the discovery that they can, after all, recreate their reality. And this is the true power of the 6 sacred steps. Beyond the fact of transforming your external circumstances, the 6 sacred steps will transform you. They will awaken you to the fact that you are indeed a creator being. And this will invite you to the journey of awakening to ever greater creative power. Those who are of a higher frequency of consciousness and ready to work far more powerfully and directly with the recreation of their reality may wish to explore the tools of creation that Zingdad will soon be releasing. The tools of creation are suitable for those who are already of unity consciousness, of 6th density consciousness and above. And those ready to make that leap to unity consciousness will benefit from looking at the tools of creation. They will simply not be usable by deep third density beings. As you continue to awaken further and further to oneness, so too you will also discover even more powerful creative abilities than those outlined in the tools of creation. Eventually, as a 7th density being, your very thoughts will magically bring experiences to you. But that is all for much later upon your journey through awakening. For now, enjoy the 6 sacred steps and apply them mindfully, respectfully, and lovingly, and reap the rewards of beautiful, joyful creations. I am Adamu, of the monadic entity of the Pleiadian civilization, and I've been brought to you once again through Zingdad. Until we meet again, I wish you love, joy, and peace. Goodbye.